So the battleground moves, from Blair Mountain to the courtroom. And at first they were going to try them in Logan County. And by the way, almost everybody, there was over 500 people that were indicted. Almost all of them were native West Virginians who were indicted, by the way. Very, very few immigrants or African Americans were indicted over this. In fact, it's less than 10%. Okay, so of the 500 plus, almost all of them are native West Virginians. Okay, and they're going after native West Virginians in this. If you look at the media coverage, it's blamed on the backward culture of the mountaineer. They're just a bunch of backward, uncivilized, moonshine drinking, barefooted, inbred hillbillies. And that's why they're doing this. This is what's causing the violence, and it is this sickness that is preventing the industrial progress of the nation in this part of the country. Well, anyway, that's what they were going for. The UMWA and the miners' representation. It was T.C. Townsend that was their main lawyer. And Townsend's able to get a change of venue. They held them in the Logan County Jail. My great-grandfather was held in the Logan County Jail along with Fred Mooney and Bill Blizzard and Bill Petrie, the main leaders of the miners. And Don Chafin allowed townspeople to go up and heckle them. You could go up and heckle the prisoners if you paid him a quarter, and they would let you go up there. And even on the ledger in the Kanawha County Courthouse, it said reason for incarceration, and by each name it had RN on the ledger, which stood for redneck. Because if you were a redneck, you were a Union man. That's what the word redneck, that's the connotation that it had in 1921, that if you wore a red bandana around your neck, then you were associated with the Union. You were associated with, working class people. Obviously, because of the way the miners were portrayed, the term redneck now has been fused. First of all, it was two words. Now it was fused into one word, and now it's become, kind of a running joke in American popular culture. So that's part of this aftermath in the way that the miners are going to be portrayed, and how that's going to cast a very long shadow over West Virginia to the very present day. So they end up going to Charlestown, all the way in the eastern panhandle, and in no small bit of irony, they end up in the very same courthouse where John Brown was tried after the raid on Harper's Ferry. Two of the more important treason trials in American history take place in West Virginia. Don't know what's in the water here, but there you have it, right? And so Bill Blizzard is the first of the major leaders to be tried. The coal companies, they go in, they try to bribe people. They try to, there's a lot of corruption in these trials. And the miners, by the way, are a part of it too. The United Mine Workers, they send organizers to Jefferson County, where Charlestown is, a few weeks ahead of this. And they send people disguised as Bible salesmen. Right, and this was a time when you knocked on a stranger's door, they would actually let you into their home. That would never work today. But, where people would let you into their, so they would knock on somebody's door and come in, and they were selling Bibles. And they would say, oh, we just came from trying to sell Bibles in Logan County, and you wouldn't believe this Don Chafin guy. You wouldn't believe what's going on down there and how they're all being used and abused, Oh, it was a great little scheme. So both sides are trying to throw in propaganda to influence jurors and all this kind of stuff. There were two miners that turned state's evidence, however, and were going to testify against Keeney and Mooney and Blizzard, saying that they were present at Blair Mountain, because what everybody wanted to do, what the prosecutors wanted to do, and the prosecutors, by the way, were not run by the state. Although it was the state versus each individual miners, the coal companies, it was their prosecuting team that ran the prosecution. The coal companies, by the way, billed the state for the legal fees after the trials were over. They were called the Coal Dust Twins, were the names of what the miners called the lawyers. So anyway, they have these trials, and the two individuals that were going to turn state's evidence, both of them are murdered before they could take the stand. But they were going to testify against my great-grandfather and Blizzard and the others, because they were trying to establish that the leadership of the Union was there. And by establishing that, they could say that the United Mine Workers itself was a rebellious organization that was trying to foment violence, and then they could they could declare the Union illegal that way. So they weren't just going after punishments, they were using these series of court cases to go after the Union as a whole. And they did do extraordinary damage to the UMWA. A part of the issue with many of the documentaries and histories and books that have been written about Blair Mountain is they go from the Battle of Blair Mountain and then immediately jump to 1933, when the Roosevelt administration begins to legalize unions and the coal fields get unionized. And that's kind of to put a pretty bow around things, right? But that was a tough decade between Blair Mountain and between the Roosevelt administration. First of all, the 1920s saw the highest percentage and the highest number of coal mining disasters and deaths in West Virginia. They were averaging over 400 deaths a year in the coal mines of West Virginia from the midnight in the decade right after Blair Mountain. So the decade after Blair Mountain was the deadliest time in West Virginia to be a coal miner, and it was at a time when they had completely deunionized. As soon as the unions got out, the mines became way more dangerous. So there's a tangible loss of life that comes from the failure of the miners to be able to unionize and the success that the industry had in basically bankrupting the union. They didn't get many convictions out of this, right? But what they did get was bankrupting the union because of all the money it took to defend everyone. So they win in court, but financially they lose out, and the UMWA in the state, which meant the UMWA across America is devastated throughout the 1920s.